Hello and welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to give you an update on my Dometic refrigerator. Welcome back. Thanks for being here. My name is Scott and I've been running a Dometic refrigerator in the car. Not quite full time, but enough to where I have decided to just leave it in the car. And I gotta say, I kind of like it. At first, I was using it in the trunk, and that worked fairly well, but it takes up trunk space. And it's a little bit of a challenge to get in and out of it because in order to open the top, the lid, and get in, I had to pull the cooler. It's marketed as a cooler, but I'm gonna call it a refrigerator. I had to pull the refrigerator out a little bit so then I can access or open the lid, because otherwise the parcel shelf would interfere with it. And so then I made a platform that I could put it on. That was a whole lot more convenient because there's quite a bit more clearance here to open the cooler. I can't open it fully all the way, but I can open enough to get in and out of it pretty easily. And then there came this point where I decided I wanted to put my rear seat delete back into service, and it works great with that too. And now I have storage underneath here and on the other side as well. I've enjoyed having it in the car full time. Even though I don't use it full time, it's nice to have the option to simply turn it on and put something I just purchased in there. I use it for grocery shopping all the time. In fact, right now it's got frozen goods in it. I just stopped at the grocery store and I'm just shooting this video on my way home. Let me share a few things I've learned about having the refrigerator in the car full time. For starters, it was working great when I first got it, because I first started using it full time, I want to say in March, so it was early in the season, and I had a little bit of problems with things freezing that I didn't intend to have frozen. And then I discovered on one hot day, it was really hot. Well, when I say really hot, it's 95 degrees. So to some people that's really hot, but to people in Arizona, that's not. So it was about 95 degrees out, and I think we know that on a day like that, the interior of a car can just soar up to 130 degrees, 140 degrees even. And I don't even know when it's above 130 degrees because the thermometer that I use for measuring temperature, the display on it the crystals in it overactivate and then I can't read it. So when it's over 130 degrees in the car, I have no idea how hot it really is. But it must have gotten hot. I've got 4 temperature probes that I use in the car. One is in the refrigerator itself. I have one in my equipment space, one in what used to be the trunk of the car, but now that my rear seat delete is installed, it's just an open space. And then of course the main display tells me what the temperature is in the front of the car. I also sometimes will put another sensor in the car to a different thermometer than I can then put up in my office, and so I can monitor things in the car while I'm inside the house. And so one day I noticed that the temperature in the fridge was 60 degrees. So it made me wonder if something came unplugged or maybe the refrigerator was overheating. So I came out to have a look, and sure enough, it was one of those days when it was just 130 plus in the car. And that compelled me to take a deeper dive into the owner's manual. I mean, I looked at the owner's manual when I first got the refrigerator, but other than a cursory look, what's there to look at, right? But I decided to look at the operating specifications, and that was when I learned that, well, I already knew that the cooling range for the fridge was between -8 and 50 degrees. So it can either be a refrigerator or it can freeze, and -8 degrees is a pretty good freeze. But then I looked at the ambient temp, and that's the temperature in which the fridge is designed to function. And to my surprise, that was 61 degrees, which is kind of high, to 110 degrees. And so that explained 2 things for me. One was, remember I said back in March, I was having things that would freeze when I didn't intend for them to freeze. Well, in March, I was on the road and traveling at 40 and 50 degrees, and up in the mountains in California, it was freezing. And so the interior of the car, especially in the trunk where the refrigerator was at that time, it was probably in the 50s. Well, that's below the ambient temp that the thing is designed to work at. So I guess that affected its ability to not freeze things. Then on the other end of the scale, it's only designed to work in an environment up to 110 degrees. Well, my car was 130 degrees, so obviously it's not going to keep up. So I needed to work on a plan to keep the car cooler, and I'll get to that in a minute. But something else I saw, remember I said that its operating range, not its operating range, its cooling capability is from -8 to 50 degrees. Well, there's a note in there that says it can't achieve the lowest temperature if the temperatures are above 90 degrees. So if the car is over 90 degrees, then it's not going to make it to -8. Where that line is, if it's this hot in the car, then it'll go down this far and so forth. I don't know where that line is. So I just assume that if it's over 90 degrees in the car, then I can't freeze anything. But most of the time I'm just using it as a refrigerator, and that's okay. Later, I addressed the cooling issue in the car. At first, my trick was to just crack the windows about that far, and that would of course let excessive heat out of the car. I just had to be careful if it started raining on me. But then eventually I got my hands on a set of WeatherTech window shades. I got the full set, which basically puts reflective and insulated coverings on all the glass, and I've been really amazed with those things. Definitely no fridge overheating with those things installed. And so even on our hottest days, I think since putting in the reflective window shades, I don't think it's been over 95 here. So that's been my plan for keeping the refrigerator happy. Something else I've done to keep it happy is I got this protective cover. On some of the other units, this cover is advertised as being an insulative cover, but on this size, it's not. It's just protective. And I got it for two reasons. One was, well, for protection. The other was for cosmetics and maybe a little bit of concealment, because a black something in the car at night is more difficult to distinguish than a lighter colored something, which if you look under here, you can see that this lid is white. And so I wanted to protect that. Something else that I want to cover in here is powering the unit. In the original video that I shot, I'll link that up here. I had mentioned that I was powering it with a Jackery power station, the Explorer 500, and it works really well. But the drawback to it is if I don't drive the car a lot, but I'm running the fridge full time, it will consume more power than what I can put in with my limited driving. And so if I'm on a road trip, no sweat. The Jackery will charge from near zero all the way to a full charge in about 6 or 7 hours. But I don't drive that much every day. And so if I drive an hour a day, but the refrigerator is running 24 hours a day, eventually, it'll take a few days, maybe 4 days. Eventually the battery is going to get down to a point to where it needs help getting charged, or I need to take it for a drive, or I need to turn off the fridge. And that's usually what I do. Right now I'm only using the fridge for grocery trips, sometimes on little expeditions that I do, ham radio expeditions. So it's nice to have the fridge in the car when I'm parked and doing ham radio stuff, because then I have refreshments with me. But odds are if I drive to one of those, then I'm going to be driving the car long enough to charge the battery. When I'm not actually using the fridge, I shut it off, and then I let the battery charge normally during my routine driving, and then it's topped off and ready to go. I expect all of that is going to resolve itself when I install the LifePo battery system that I mentioned in a previous video. I've had a dead battery, and it kind of surprised me. It was my fault, but it still surprised me. But once I have that LifePo system built and installed in the car, that's going to change a lot. It'll charge faster and it will last longer. Seems like the best of both worlds. Hey, I just wanted to jump in here with a little bit of supplemental information. When I first started the video, I don't think I had in mind long-term review. It was more just an update, but really this update wouldn't be complete unless I provided some long-term stuff about running this refrigerator, particularly its endurance while being powered by the Jackery Explorer 500, which is my primary method for powering the fridge. And I think back when I first shared with you the endurance of running the fridge on the Jackery, I think I said it would last for about 3 or 4 days. And that would be the scenario in which maybe I stop at a campground, or maybe in my case a hotel, because I've been doing a lot of hotels, and just leave the fridge in the car running. It will run for about 3 days, maybe 4, depending on the temperature. But if you look at the dates on that, I think I did all of that back in March and April, and naturally it's cooler out. I think the highs were around 78 degrees, 82 max. It just wasn't very hot. And then it would dip down into the 50s or 60s in the evenings. And the refrigerator obviously is not working as hard as it does during the summer. Well, now it's summertime and the temperatures are in the mid 90s, maybe the high 80s. And at night it only gets down to say 75, 78. So it doesn't really cool off that great around here. So that naturally the refrigerator is going to run more. So I get about 36 to 48 hours during the summer, and that's adequate for a weekend, no sweat there. But again, that's what the refrigerator is set up as, a refrigerator. I mentioned earlier that I have it set up for a freezer. And what I did on a house refrigerator, they typically recommend setting the refrigerator for about 37 to 40 degrees and the freezer for 0. Well, I have dialed this freezer down to -8 because I wanted to see if it would do it. But when you freeze that deep, it runs continuously. So all day, all night, but it won't last all day and all night. It's set for -8, it lasted 10 hours. So if you're doing a deep freeze, it's not going to power as long, which is understandable because the fridge will never stop running set that deep. In the future, I think I will set it up for 0 degrees and maybe do another test. So if I do another test for 0 degrees, I'll put the result of how long it ran right up here. I don't expect to shoot another clip to report that, but I will let you know if I run another test with it set for 0. Something else that came to me, it was a revelation very recently. I mentioned that I have had some unwanted freezing. And what I realized was when I first put the fridge into the car and started using it, it comes with a basket. And I guess that basket is so you can quickly move stuff in and out of the freezer and into the house. And I just don't use it. And one of the first things I put in the fridge was a carton of eggs. And the eggs would not fit flat in the basket. I had to stick them in at an angle or something. And so I just took the basket out and I didn't use it. And I haven't used it in nearly the year that I've had this refrigerator cooler. And what that's resulting in is my contents are allowed to rest directly against the walls and the floor. And it stands to reason that in order for the fridge to be able to get down to, if I set it for 36, in order for it to get there, then the coils in the unit are going to be colder than that. And so if I put something right on the wall, right on the floor, it stands to reason that they might freeze. So I'm going to try putting the basket back in and do some testing to see if that changes things. Perhaps just that, I don't know, it's only about this much of a gap, I believe, that it gives you an air gap to keep your product off of the hard surfaces in there. Maybe that alone will keep my stuff from freezing. We'll see how that goes. That's it. Back to that other Scott. I can't think of much else to say for a quote-unquote long-term review. It's been nice having it in the car, and I'm going to leave it this way. All right, that's it for today. I'll see you next time. Take care.